My name is Christina, a 25-year-old recluse. Although I'm not unemployed and not in education or training, my family might see me as such, particularly my brother. Why did I end up this way? Well, it's because of my mistrust in people, which stems from my experiences in middle school. Even though I say mistrust, the causes are various, and in my case, it was mainly because I was ignored. I'm not sure why, but it seems to be the result of people around me not finding me interesting because I was only interested in machines. I've always loved tinkering with computers, and I was good at anything related to machines, which made me useful at home. However, that was short-lived. As my grades at school started to suffer and I spent more time playing with computers than hanging out with friends, my parents began to worry. By the time I graduated from elementary school, they started scolding me. How long are you going to keep playing with machines? As I went through my middle school years while being scolded by my parents, I gradually began to think that I shouldn't be doing what I wanted to do. After that, I would isolate myself in my room when school was off so that my parents wouldn't notice, completely cutting off all contact with the outside world. This led to more people calling me weird or dangerous, and I gradually began to become isolated at school as well. My only ally during this time was my brother Keith. From a young age, he was good at flattering me and knew how to get me motivated. With Keith's support, I was able to graduate from compulsory education, but I didn't go on to high school and instead spent my time doing jobs that I could do on a computer at home. Right after graduating from middle school, around the age of 16, I was able to work part-time, so I used that money to buy old computers, disassemble them, and freely rebuild them from scratch. This hobby of mine paid off, and by the time I turned 20, I was able to build computers that could be sold. Then things quickly changed when I started a business where affordable computers were readily available, and I was soon well known. At 25, I have made a small fortune and have even managed to earn an income that allows me to put $2,500 into my parents' household every month and still have money left over. Although I had talked to my parents about my job several times, they didn't understand it, and after a few arguments, they established the stance that as long as I could support myself, they didn't care what I did. Thanks to this, my parents no longer interfered with my actions because I was contributing money and I was able to live freely at my parents' house. However, the one who didn't think highly of me was my brother. My brother, who had been my ally and the only one who understood me when I was a student, used to be very kind. But maybe he got fed up with his sister, who, even after turning 20, was still holed up in her room at her parents' house, continuously tinkering with machines. Eventually, he started to act harshly towards me whenever he saw me, and since I wasn't the type to stay quiet, conflicts with my brother increased, and now we're on bad terms. Our relationship took a further turn for the worse after my brother got married. It seems that my brother's wife was a woman he'd been involved with since his high school days, but she had never thought highly of me after hearing about me from my brother, and she didn't like the fact that she had become my sister-in-law, and seemed to have instilled something in my brother. As a result of this continued situation, I came to be called the plague of the family home. Even though I was isolated in my room, I felt my heart wasting away from the relentless malice aimed at me, clearly different from the worried words of my parents. My parents' home, which had been a comfortable place to be despite various criticisms, was transformed overnight into a den of enemies. I no longer felt at ease, and I gradually felt my parents being won over and my allies disappearing. Despite this, I had sufficient income of my own, was properly contributing to the household expenses, and naturally had the right to isolate myself in my room. But I suppose I seemed like a freeloader to my brother and sister-in-law, who didn't understand what I was doing. They gradually started saying things like, "We're going to drive you out of the family home and live here with our parents." I was fully estranged from my brother and his plans to live in the family home by kicking me out, so I thought it wouldn't really matter if I left once I found a new place to live. After all, if I was being kicked out of the house, there would be no need to contribute to the household expenses like I had been doing, which meant I could save that money instead. It was something to be grateful for in a way. When I was considering leaving the family home, my brother suddenly started talking about inheritance. Apparently, my brother had misunderstood that the reason I could live comfortably, even though I was unemployed and holed up in my room, was because our parents had money. So when the subject of me leaving the house was brought up, I was told, "We'll take care of mom and dad, that we should inherit their assets. You should just renounce your claim to the inheritance. The reason our parents could live their lives doing what they liked at home every day without working was precisely because of the living expenses I was providing. I didn't think they could continue to live as they had without that money, but in my brother's eyes, I was just a burden holed up in my room. I thought I might as well leave as things were, but I decided to confirm one more time out of compassion. "Are you really okay with me leaving?" I asked. My brother laughed at me condescendingly and said, "We'd be glad if you could just get out already." I realized once again how little he understood. He doesn't get it at all. And felt sorry for him and his wife, which further solidified my resolve to leave our family home. A few days after my brother's declaration that I should leave, I was still holed up in my room. During this time, the efforts of my brother and sister-in-law to get me out were relentless. They were persistently knocking on my door, instigated Mom to stop providing meals for me, and even started saying things like, "Do your own laundry." However, these were all things I would have to do if I were to live alone. I didn't find it particularly troublesome. It wasn't like I was just letting things happen and accepting what I was told. I was having my place unfairly taken away from me. Of course, I was not going to let it go without preparing for some revenge. I am good with machines. Perhaps my brother had forgotten that. He didn't realize what it meant for me to have free access to a computer. I am not so magnanimous or gullible as just to quietly leave when I'm told to. My brother's marriage, with me being a shut-in sister, was the only opportunity for our parents to see a grandchild. Knowing that my parents, who were blinded by this, approved of me leaving, I decided to set a trap that would be activated when I left the house. A trap that would start as soon as I left this house. Haha! Finally, I found a new place to live, finished the necessary procedures, and decided to leave my family home. Just before I left my family home, I left a parting message for my parents and brother. "I've been providing for the family, and you've forgotten all the good I've done. I hope you realize who the real curse on our family wealth is." My parents seemed taken aback for a moment, but they probably believed my brother would somehow manage. In the end, all three of them brushed off my words as sour grapes. I'm sure they didn't take what I was saying seriously. However, I thought it was best this way for now, so I decided to go ahead and leave the house. I brought over a considerable amount of equipment from my family home and bought additional items, as well as necessary furniture and appliances. I arranged everything the way I liked it, furnished the place with my favorite interior design, and created a supremely comfortable space. I found myself working more efficiently than ever. Living alone was initially daunting, but it was so easy to live in this environment that I wished I had done this sooner. The locals were also very kind and friendly, and life was surprisingly comfortable. Since I left my family home and started doing everything myself, I've been having a blast, experiencing many things for the first time. In stark contrast to my fulfilling days, I wondered if life at my family home was getting tough since they lost my income, when suddenly I got a call from my mother. "Hey, Christina, did you do something to our machines?" "What? Do something to the machines?" "Yeah, there's something off with the computers and electronics." "I have no idea about that. I used to look after them for free because we were family, but since you treated me like a nuisance and kicked me out, even if you're my parents, you'll have to pay the regular price." "What? You're really greedy. We're your parents. At least give us a discount." "Well, in that case, I'd prefer to give my friends a discount. Unlike you, my friends don't treat me harshly." "Fine, you cheapskate!" Inwardly, I thought, oh, it's that issue. And while relieved that another trap had not been sprung, I handled the situation. My mother, however, must not have liked my reaction. She hung up abruptly, like a petulant child, and even sent a spiteful email saying something along the lines of, "Mean kids lose their friends." It made me wonder who the real adult was. Honestly, it was self-centered, if not selfish. As for what I had done to the family computer, I had merely returned all the status adjustments I had been doing for free for my family back to their original state. I bet to a novice, it probably seems like the computer started malfunctioning on its own. When I told them to request the company to fix it as an individual, they threw a tantrum. But well, it's within my expectations, so I decided to let it be. 6 months after being kicked out of my home, and just as I was getting the hang of living alone, my father gave me a call. "I hate to ask, but can you lend me some money?" "Excuse me? Lend you money? What do you mean?" "Well, it's just that your brother and his wife have been spending a bit recklessly. They seem to be under the impression that we're rolling in dough, and it's nothing but complaints from them. They're always saying things like, give us money to buy this, or give us money to go there. I have no idea about any of this. Why do you always come to me with everything? I mean, I've heard of daughters who live alone, sending money home, but parents asking their children for money? Isn't that something you're supposed to do out of generosity? That's easier said than done. Well, even $500 would help. I'm not giving you anything. I won't lend you money either. I have no intention of helping you out financially anymore. Of course, if you pay me for my services, I'll work on your machines. How? You've really become stingy. I guess what Mom said were true. During my unemployed years, he had the nerve to say things like, you used to do whatever you wanted at home, and he kept grumbling about other things, but I didn't care and just hung up. My father didn't send any emails, but he started calling more than twice a day, and I just thought, what troublesome parents I have. A few days after my father's constant contact, my brother, who seemed to be really in a bind, called me next. When I asked him why they were calling me in turn, he said, tell me why our family home was wealthy before. I suppose he must have had a hunch that their financial situation has obviously worsened since I moved out. But it's too late. My comfortable place is my current home. Both my work and life are entirely contained in this house, and there's no way I'm leaving it ever again. Is it maybe the reason our family was wealthy was because I was contributing $2,500 each month to the household? I didn't have to contribute that much, but I felt a sense of gratitude for being raised by my parents, so I gave more. So now, why would I continue to financially support a home that I was kicked out of? There's no way I would, right? I see. So that's why Mom and Dad's financial situation suddenly worsened. I'm sorry, but even if you asked me to come back, I have no intentions of doing so. I understand. Looking back now, what we did was terrible. I'm sorry. It's too late for apologies. Anyway, I have no plans to be involved with any of you in the future. Don't call me anymore. Hey, wait! Ignoring my brother's protests, I hung up the phone. When I left home, I made up my mind never to get involved with them again. It's inconceivable to forgive them that easily. I decided to cancel my cell phone contract. I couldn't bear the situation of receiving calls on various matters anymore. 5 years have passed since I canceled my mobile contract and started living alone, and I got married. My partner works in the same field as me, and he understands my lifestyle. He's a man who helps with the housework in my stead. I thought about contacting my parents since they're technically my family, but it's too late. I haven't reported anything. However, my husband expressed his desire to greet my parents, and curious about the current situation, I hired a detective to investigate the situation at my family's home. Then, a slew of deaths came to light. After I cut off contact, my parents were desperate to maintain their lifestyle and keep my brother and his wife tied to the family home, borrowing money from various lenders. But the money with no hope of repayment only accumulated interest, leaving them helpless. Currently, the debt I found from my parents alone exceeded $100,000. The house was used as collateral for the debts, and the place where my family home once stood is now a vacant lot. While I felt a bit sad because of my attachment to my family home, I concluded that they reaped what they sowed and decided to investigate my brother's current situation. My brother seemed to have suggested a divorce due to his wife's extravagant spending habits, but she didn't accept it at all. They're currently going through a divorce lawsuit, but this will not last long as it is both time and money consuming. His wife hired a lawyer from somewhere and is resisting the lawsuit, insistent on not parting with my brother, leaving her at an impasse. My brother and his wife don't have children yet, and it's just a rumor, but apparently my brother is infertile. Concerned, I sent a detective to the hospital where my brother and his wife were being treated, and it seems that he really was infertile, almost azoospermic, and was told by the doctor that natural conception was nearly impossible. My parents, who were hoping for a grandchild from my brother and his wife, and kicked me out when that didn't happen, were disappointed and ended the cohabitation. The family home was sold to pay off the debt. That was the pitiful state of my family now. This terrible situation was evident just from a casual investigation. It was clear that meeting these people in this state was not advantageous for me either, or my husband. After all, I have a kind husband now, 4 children, and a dog. We've bought a large home and are living the life that those people idealized. If they knew this fact, they would surely try to take advantage of it. I couldn't bear such a thing, so as soon as I knew this fact, I went to the local office and arranged so that my information could only be accessed through a personal disclosure request. And I made sure never to get close to those people from my side, and asked my husband to bear with not greeting for our marriage. My husband looked disappointed, but when I explained the current situation, he seemed to understand, and he hasn't said anything since. When the situation at my family home calms down a bit, and a time of reconciliation comes, I hope I can get along with my parents and brother.